Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. The day has finally come. New US-made long-range bomb, expected to arrive as soon as Wednesday in Ukraine. The ground-launched small-diameter bomb doesn't even exist in the US inventory yet. Ukraine is finally getting GLSDB starting tomorrow. The weapon, co-developed by Boeing and Saab, is made up of a precision-guided 250-pound bomb strapped to a rocket motor and fired from various ground launchers. The US military has a similar version of the bomb that is air-launched. These are JDAMs. But a ground-launched version does not yet exist in the US inventory. So the United States has plenty of these small-diameter bombs and plenty of these rocket boosters. And Boeing and Saab came up with the idea: give us the rocket boosters, give us the bombs, and we'll build a connector piece and a glide kit that's GPS guided. And Ukraine can launch these from HIMARS launchers. Now, the last couple weeks, there's been some confusion if GLSDB is in fact launchable from the HIMARS. There might be a new special truck, we don't know yet. But we're going to find out in the next 48 hours. I guarantee you, pictures and videos will hit the internet as soon as Ukraine starts launching these things. And the reason why this is so significant is the price tag, the cost. GLSDB is significantly cheaper than Gimler's rounds or ATACMS. So the per unit cost was quoted at about $50,000 per unit. And we don't know the size of the contract. But let's be conservative and say the United States 11 months ago allocated $50 million. At a per unit cost of $50,000, Ukraine is getting 1,000 of these GLSDB rounds. A 93 kilogram bomb that can go up to 150 kilometers into Russian-controlled territory. So we're going to find out at what rate Boeing and Saab can deliver these and what impact they're going to have on the battlefield. Anytime Russia chooses to park one of their tanks or set up shop for a command post, GLSDB is going to be waiting for them. 150 kilometers is a great range, and we're going to find out real soon what difference this is going to have on the battlefield. Russia lost another jet. Ukraine downs Russian Su-34 fighter jet over the Luhansk region. Russia has lost several important aircraft in recent weeks, including 3 Su-34s in one day a month ago, and then 2 command planes earlier this month. So Russia's losing about one of their military jets per week now, as Ukraine is maneuvering around a Patriot launcher across the front lines, going after these Russian planes conducting combat operations. They're still doing it. They're still flying planes within the range of a Patriot missile. So, I mean, if you're a Russian pilot, I don't know why you would still voluntarily do these missions, because your days are numbered. Another top story from the last 2 days is this rumor that General Zaluzhny was fired. It's not true. Ukraine's defense ministry responds to the reports that Zaluzhny has been fired. The rumor mill went into overdrive on Monday evening after claims made by several politicians and journalists that Zaluzhny had been fired. This isn't unusual for a military commander to be replaced, especially 2 years into a war. This is no discredit to General Zaluzhny. He could still have the job. He might not have the job. But it's okay. If he's replaced by General Budanov or someone equally as competent or equally as liked, doesn't mean General Zaluzhny's fight is over, but unless President Zelensky or Defense Minister Umerov confirms it, there's no reason to spread rumors until it's a fact. What's the goal for Ukraine this year? We know, given that Republicans are blocking military aid from the United States, they're going to have to be conservative this year. But something that the Ukrainians can do, surpassing Russia in drone operations, one of the main tasks of 2024. Ukraine is never going to outproduce Russia in tanks or in artillery shells or in manpower, drafting meat to use on the battlefield. But drones are something that Ukraine can have a production advantage in. If they focus on this, this is something that can definitely help them this year. Another Russian oil refinery falls victim to a drone attack. Ukraine has not yet claimed responsibility for the strike, but it follows a series of attacks on such facilities in the recent weeks. There is a video, doesn't really show a whole lot. I'll link it down below, but I imagine when these events occur, Russia is doing everything they can to prevent video evidence from hitting the internet. And here's the map showing the recent strikes from the last couple months. And you can see all of Russia's oil and gas reserves are east of the Urals, brought west through their networks of pipes. And we're 2 years into this war. I think Ukraine doesn't care about the global price of oil or energy anymore. They have to shut down these oil refineries to starve Russia of funds. So we had the strike at Ust-Luga and St. Petersburg. These are oil depots on the Baltic Sea. We had the strike on Klinsky. This feeds the pipelines that go through Belarus. And we've had strikes down in Novorossiysk and Tuapse. These are never going to stop. There's no way Russia can make these stop. So every day, every week, Ukraine's going to continue blowing up these oil depots. This is where ships in the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea load up to export to the rest of the world. This is Russia's shadow tanker fleet, but if they can't fill up, they're not going anywhere. And Ukraine's tactic of hitting Russia's oil and gas terminals has a twofold advantage. Yes, there's the obvious one of going after their export revenue to deprive them of funds. But when they strike one of these oil depots, you can't hide it. You can see it up front, you can see it from satellite images. Thousands of Russian workers go to these refineries every day to do their job. If they take pictures and videos, if they see the damage firsthand, they're going to tell their family and friends. Their family and friends are going to tell their family and friends. So this has a psychological impact because the Russian narrative, especially the last couple months, has been, the war is already over. Stop supporting Ukraine because Ukraine is already lost. Russia's already won. This is a bizarre propaganda narrative that I get in the comments section, but if the war is over, why do your oil depots keep blowing up, Russia? Can't stop that, can you? So Russia's coming up with creative solutions. The authorities in 3 Russian regions have been shutting off their 4G internet at night to protect their infrastructure against Ukrainian drones. The theory being is that these Ukrainian drones still need local cell reception in order to be flown. So Russia's solution is just to shut off the internet in Russia in the nighttime. Is that genius? I'm going to need a second to think about that one. But it might have backfired. The largest outage in the history of Russian internet is currently happening. The internet in Russia has been down for over an hour. As of the time I'm filming this video, Olga is currently on Telegram, and this is the post she just wrote. Everything broke down. Only Telegram continues working for me. If it stops working as well, a long-awaited digital detox will come for the best. They don't have internet in North Korea. I think Vladimir Putin has been looking at the sweet setup that Kim Jong-un has for his country. And I do think that when the revolution comes, the internet in Russia will be shut off, and getting information, pictures, and videos out of the country will be difficult, but perhaps this is the Russians doing a dry run for their people. Occasionally shutting off the internet so that People just accept it and get used to it, and then when it finally disappears for good, Russia can be as prosperous as the people of North Korea. Russia's planned gas pipeline to China hit by a construction delay. So the Chinese, yeah, they're still doing business with the Russians, but they're not bending over backwards to help Russia win this war. The Russians, Putin, really wants to construct this Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, and this pipeline's going to go through Mongolia to get to China. And China's dragging their feet, both in allocating the capital and clearing bureaucratic hurdles. We're 2 years into this war. Russia really needs this pipeline to get their gas to China, and China doesn't appear to be in any hurry. When we check in with the military map, no significant changes. We can zoom in on the city of Avdiivka, and the city of Avdiivka continues to hold for now. And the Russians have a new brilliant explanation for why their special military operation is taking so long. So this guy is floating a new theory why the war is going so long, and it's a good one. Let me read this for you. I was trying to explain to myself why this war is taking so long. In reality, Russia's power is such that if it hits, the fly is dead. It's completely squashed. I explain this to myself that Ukraine is not the enemy. Even Putin says Ukraine is not the enemy. The war is taking place in Ukraine, but it's not a war against Ukraine. It's against the West. In 2022, Russia could not defeat Washington, London, Berlin, and Paris by military means. This is where it gets good. But by extending, let's say if it had won in Ukraine really fast, this conflict would have been over soon. The disturbances in society would have simply ended, and nothing further would have been happening. By prolonging the war, Russia essentially created internal agitation and internal protests. It essentially launched the mechanism of internal eruptions in Western societies. And now ordinary American, British, German citizens are also Russia's allies. Again, the whole proletariat is with us. Well, in fact, it's a victory for Russia. Even if you look at this LGBT agenda being implemented everywhere, while Russia is against it. Accordingly, Russia's victory is in the interests of ordinary Americans, Brits, and Germans. Russia is now essentially fighting in the interests of all humanity. The prolongation of the war awakens all of humanity to stand up in the defense of itself. So the theory now is that Russia deliberately is dragging this war out years because this is helping elect politicians in the West who are anti-LGBT. Russia is allowing hundreds of thousands of their soldiers to be slaughtered. They're bankrupting their country. They're losing thousands of tanks and armored vehicles on purpose so that anti-LGBT politicians can get elected in Berlin, London, and Washington, D.C. I'll let you be the judge how stupid that is. So Russia needs more meat for the grinder, and they've convinced this group of Syrians to accept Russian passports, Russian citizenship. In exchange, they will join the military to go fight on the front lines in Ukraine.
مبروك للشباب الجنسية الروسية هاي كل واحد جوازه وجنسيته الروسية صارت معه مرحبا شكرا للدكتور أكرم شكرا للدكتور شكرا أهلا وسهلا خلال 5 أيام صار روسي وهاي كل
These men will all be dead within 60 days. Here's another video showing African mercenaries also signing up for the Russian military to go fight for the empire.
Привет от наших друзей, братьев. Победа будет за нами. Да, Россия тут всегда позитивно, несмотря ни на что. Русский мир, жив. Победа за нами.
Russian propaganda is a hell of a drug. How the heck do you convince Africans and Muslims from the Middle East to come to Europe to fight for your empire? What the heck do they get out of this? These men from Africa and the Middle East are victims of propaganda. Russia is just going to use them. They have zero chance of survival, given that Russia is not winning this war. But kudos to the Russians for tricking stupid people to fight for them. Russian Election Authority officially registers Putin's candidacy in the presidential race. Putin needed 300,000 unique signatures in order to officially be on the ballot. The election's coming up in 45 days, but officially, Putin is on the ballot. Wow. And as Press Secretary Peskov was asked if he would participate in any pre-election debates, and this is Peskov's response.
В этом избирательном процессе он планирует участвовать в предвыборных дебатах?
Президент не участвует в предвыборных.
Dictators don't participate in pre-election debates. We all know who's going to win the election. Let's now talk about U.S. politics briefly. President Zelensky stated, "Europe cannot support Ukraine alone without the United States. Europe will likely not be able to support Ukraine financially and militarily if the United States were to significantly reduce its aid." Zelensky made this statement on German television yesterday. Trump has previously implied he would cut support to Ukraine if elected, and said his primary focus would be to secure an immediate ceasefire with Russia within 24 hours, without specifying how he would do that. This is where I think it's critical that we listen to the Russians. Listen to the Russians explain U.S. politics, because they have no incentive to spin it to influence the American people. They're speaking to their own people, and they're not very good about spinning it to not make Trump look bad. So this clip from Russian Media Monitor, pundits discuss U.S. aid to Ukraine. This clip is critical. I need to read this for you. These are the highlights. I'll put the whole clip down below if you want to see the clip for yourself. Share it with people if you think anyone would find this interesting. But this is what the Russians are saying about Donald Trump. What kind of an impact will the American political crisis have on the Ukrainian problems? This man right here is speaking. In reality, it will impact the Ukrainian problems quite seriously, since an electoral race is currently underway. As we know, Biden's current administration completely supports Ukraine. So these are the Russians stating that Biden and the Democrats completely support Ukraine. That's their opinion. They have to somehow ensure that this conflict, the special military operation, does not become a problem for them. It's not just about pushing the Ukraine aid through. They will push something through. It won't be the $61 billion, but they'll make some kind of deal with Republicans. It will be very difficult and take a long time, although they promised to present something this week. I mean in the Senate. You can forget about, he means the House of Representatives. If you allow me one more minute to talk about Donald Trump. Today I read that he's basically the sole leader of the Republican Party. If Trump gets to the kind of mandates where he doesn't have to rely on the support of establishment Republicans, the traditional ones like Lindsey Graham, his VP will be a part of his MAGA movement. He won't have to appoint any Boltons or Haleys. In that case, there possibly might be a very interesting proposal about ending the Ukrainian conflict. Trump yaps a lot but doesn't get much done. Burn! This is the Russians saying that Trump likes to talk but doesn't actually do anything. That's true. All he has to do is to stop the support. On the scale that is being done now, that's it. We'll do the rest ourselves. This is the Russians saying they just need Trump to continue blocking military aid to Ukraine, and eventually Russia's military can get the job done. They aren't supporting anyone right now. They just sit there and keep lingering about the money. In recent days, Trump gave a directive to Trumpers not to enter into any compromise, no matter what. He wanted to solve two problems at once. First, he wants to monopolize the issue of immigration. He doesn't want a compromise. He wants to become president and solve it his own way. Secondly, he wants to bury aid to Ukraine. Loyal Trumpers will listen to him. There aren't many of them. Most Republicans support aid to Ukraine. So these are the Russians acknowledging that Donald Trump is blocking immigration reform. Donald Trump wants open borders for the next 9 months so that he can campaign on this and attack Biden for it. Whatever deal or compromise that's bipartisan in the Senate, Trump wants that killed. He wants illegal immigration occurring because he thinks that will help him get reelected in November. The Russians also acknowledge that a majority of Republicans, Trump's own voters, do support Ukraine. To what degree? That's debatable. But Trump is acting directly against the interests of Republican voters to help the Russians. And this reminds me of a famous quote from a US senator from 1947. With Trump, politics no longer stop at the water's edge. In 1947, Senator Arthur Vandenberg of Michigan took to the Senate floor and delivered what many consider to be a speech heard round the world, where he said, "We must stop partisan politics at the water's edge," meaning the west coast of the United States, the Pacific Ocean, the east coast of the United States, the Atlantic Ocean. That phrase means simply that internal debates that Americans engage in shouldn't extend past our shores. When it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to our allies, Democrats and Republicans should not be engaging in partisan hackery. It's okay for Republicans and Democrats to fight and argue over domestic issues, tax policy, gun control, abortion rights, immigration reform, whatever. But when it comes to the United States military, fighting around the world, the president speaks. The people elected President Biden. He sets the foreign policy agenda. For the opposite party to be playing political games while U.S. soldiers are dying, this is treason. So this cartoon perfectly illustrates it. During the Cold War, Democrats and Republicans put their differences aside and stood united to defeat the Russians. But Donald Trump sees an opportunity. Donald Trump says, if I can ally myself with Putin and the Russians, that will help me become president again. I will gladly accept any help I can get from the Russians in order to defeat Biden and the Democrats. This is treason. Point blank, no debate. I'm not tolerating any wiggle room. Any Trump apologists out there defending his actions, when I can show you the clips from the Russians explaining perfectly what's happening, what's obvious to everyone. I'm going to lose it, guys. I'm going to lose it. What comes next after 3 Americans were killed in a drone attack in Jordan? The volatility in the Middle East just hit an ominous new milepost with no off-ramp in sight. The number of military casualties in the attack on a U.S. base in Jordan has risen to 34, with 8 requiring evacuation. This is the outpost in the Jordan Desert. Drones fly here to do reconnaissance across Syria and Iraq. And what happened was, Iranian-backed militants launched one of these kamikaze Shahed drones, the exact same military drones that have been slamming into Ukrainian apartment buildings for over a year now. And whoever was watching the skies at this base thought this was a reconnaissance drone returning to the base. They were expecting one of their own drones to return at the exact same time one of these Iranian Shahed drones was targeting this base. That's why it got through the air defense. That's why US service members have lost their lives. So President Biden is going to respond. I don't think he's going to directly bomb Iranian territory, but I do think there's some militant groups camping out in Iraq and Syria that are going to get lit up in the next 72 hours. They deserve it. I want to see more of it. Anybody working with the Iranians at this point is an enemy of America. And who's working with the Iranians? The Russians. The Russians are working with the Iranians. So anyone defending and supporting Russia here in the United States, you're supporting Russia's military ally, the Iranians, who are now targeting and killing US soldiers. So I beg Republicans in Congress, do the right thing. Stand up for our Democratic allies, stand up for our own soldiers, pass a bill getting military aid to our Democratic allies so that we can beat back the Russians and the Iranians. Let's now get to the good news for Ukraine. Hungary is now saying they're open to using the EU budget for a Ukraine aid package. I'm not European, but my advice to EU members, just strip this guy now of his voting rights. It's obvious. He's a Russian plant. He's working for the Russians. And if he can block aid, he'll block it. If he can reduce aid, he'll reduce it. If he can slow it down, he will slow it down. That's his sole purpose in life right now. He's not working to the benefit of the Hungarian people. He's working for the Russians. And there's no reason to engage with these people anymore. There's no reason to talk to them or take anything they say serious. They're not negotiating in good faith. They are bad faith actors. End of story. The Netherlands allocates $132 million in new military aid funding for Ukraine. Thank you so much to all my Dutch viewers out there. Ukraine situation reports, Greek S-300 surface-to-air missiles may be headed to Ukraine. Haven't heard much from Greece the last 2 years, but this is fantastic news if true. Thank you so much to the people of Greece if these missiles will be sent to Ukraine. South Korea will help restore water infrastructure that was damaged or destroyed by the full-scale invasion. Thank you so much, people of South Korea. Final clip I have for you is a project called Art Armor. And every one of these armor plates saved the life of a Ukrainian defender, either taking a bullet or a piece of shrapnel. And these armor plates were then decorated by local artists and even children, put on display. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.